Kirby Air Riders was so good, man. It's still hard to believe that a sequel to Air Ride even exists, but I'm really glad it does. The city trial mode has become my Cocomelon, and most people seem to agree on how great it is. It's a good sign that so far it's the only recent Nintendo game that doesn't have a hit piece on it with a million views. This game's appeal got so much more reach than usual Kirby games, and that's mostly thanks to the game's director, Masahiro Sakurai. He's mainly known as a Smash Bros guy, but Kirby was his first child that he hasn't worked with in a long time. And now he's finally back with the milk. And this guy has such a great track record in making games, lots of people are willing to try whatever he's cooking. I've seen some people and even some of my friends who weren't into Kirby before that are now getting interested because Kirby Air Riders was such a strong hook into the franchise. And as a longtime Kirby fan myself, that puts a big dumb smile on my face. But if you are one of those people, you might be asking what game you should start with. What's the game that'll give you the best impression and true understanding of the Kirb? You might be thinking to just start with the first game, Kirby's Dream Land, and it's not the worst idea, but honestly that game's pretty meh, you're not missing much. For those who are thinking Kirby's Avalanche, why are you thinking Kirby's Avalanche? Honestly, it doesn't really matter that much. There's a lot of great games you can start with. But if you're asking me personally, I think you should start with the same game I did. The game that grabbed me by the balls so hard, after beating it, I could confidently say I'm a Kirby fan now. And it's also become one of my all-time favorite video games, Kirby Super Star. Specifically, the remake on the DS, Kirby Super Star Ultra, but you can't go wrong with the original on the Super Nintendo either. This is the Kirby game in my eyes. It has everything you'd want. An in-depth pool of copy abilities, a charming presentation in both visual and sound. The story has that unhinged brand Kirby's come to be known for, and the gameplay is consistently fun and refreshing. I've been wanting to waffle about this game for quite a while now, and I think now is a good time for that. Now, this video was originally just going to be about the DS remake because I'm a lot more familiar with that version, and I felt that it just does everything that the original did, but better and then some. But I gave the OG Superstar another chance recently, and you know what? I've been doing it a great disservice. It's still really fun and worth playing still. So instead, this video will be about Kirby Superstar in general, kind of reviewing the two games as one and noting the differences between them. Kirby Superstar was advertised as 8 games in one, a bunch of smaller adventures in one big package. Don't get too excited though, it's more like 6. 2 of them boil down to pressing A at the right time. In fact, there's a 7th main game the tagline doesn't even acknowledge. What the heck, Sakurai? False advertising? Regardless, this has to be the coolest part about Superstar. The whole game follows this episodic structure where the core gameplay of sucking and blowing is a constant throughout the entire game, but the story and additional mechanics refresh with each game mode. One might need you to rush through the levels as fast as possible, and another you have to be more thorough in exploring every nook and cranny. This might make the game feel disconnected with how it's split up in these isolated bubbles with their own different rule sets, but in execution there's a great sense of cohesion, because like I said, the gameplay at its center, being the way Kirby controls and his ability to copy an enemy's powers, is a constant. The changes made from each of these game modes feel more like a yes and to the game's mechanics rather than a full reboot of everything you know about Kirby. And it creates this really interesting learning cycle of bettering your skills as Kirby himself while trying to adapt to the new context of the current game mode you're playing. So by the end of it, Kirby becomes an expert in all types of fields. One might say, he's a superstar. Oh my god. Going through each of these game modes are going to be the focus of this video. What spicy ingredients each of them throw into the cauldron, which of them work and which of them not as much. And you know what? I still have an addiction to tier lists, so here it comes creeping into another video of mine. Don't worry, this won't primarily be a ranking video, it'll just pop up here and there to keep track of my thoughts on each section. So let's start by getting into the baby steps of the game, Spring Breeze. Spring Breeze tells a story of when King Dedede tried to cause mass starvation upon the common folk of Dreamland. I'm not kidding, he stole all the food. Everything. You know, that's a lot of stakes for my first day on the job, but hey, what really matters is that I have fun. And I gotta say, this opening cutscene of me getting harassed by butterflies looks awfully familiar. Well, that's because Spring Breeze is roughly a remake of the original Kirby's Dream Land. That might seem like cheap rehashing, but the context of this version makes it a whole new experience. Mainly the fact that the original game didn't have copy abilities yet. They wouldn't introduce that until the next installment, Kirby's Adventure. And not only does that return in Superstar, it got a huge glow up. I respect Adventure for introducing such a core part of this franchise's identity, but I don't think it's aged the best from how each ability has a single attack, so if that one attack sucks, you'll be avoiding using that ability altogether. But Superstar fixes all of my problems. With not only feeling a lot more polished and responsive, most copy abilities come with a new look so they feel more visually distinct from one another, but they now have full movesets you can pull from different input combos. Kirby has always had a bigger emphasis on combat and puzzle solving, whereas other platformers like Mario and Sonic are more about the agility of the actual platforming, hence why you'll encounter a lot more bosses with actual full health bars and not jump on the guy 3 times you win. So expanding the copy abilities like this was not only necessary, but makes them way more fun to use. I find myself replacing my copy ability depending on the situation or just purely on a whim, and it makes the gameplay a lot more spontaneous and variable. Cutter has always been an old reliable to me. It's got a decent range of a boomerang function, and you gotta love Kirby's up special from Smash. I've always liked the bomb ability too. It's easily the best when it comes to projectiles with long distance, and only recently have I gained a huge liking to Plasma. It starts as a really weak attack, but you can build up the electricity by vigorously moving the stick around, and just doing that over and over as you launch these giant sparks is really addicting and fun to me. But I won't lie, it does hurt my fingers after a while, so sooner or later I do need to discard it for my own health. You also have a bunch of can't go wrong abilities like Beam, Sword, Fire, Ice. They're not too crazy at causing carnage, but there's no harm in nabbing them every once in a while. Oh, but who could forget the best copy ability, Copy, where it can copy an enemy's ability. I mean, that's something I already do by eating them, but this one gives you meta glasses.
Hey, Meta?
I need you to take a picture with your ass out and your back bent in with your...
I could really go on about all of these abilities, but I'll put a pin in that for the time being. Now, you could keep that copy ability for yourself, but the real superpower you possess is that you can create a homie to kiss whenever you want. These helpers are based on the enemy that you swallowed to get their ability, and they can be controlled either by a CPU or a second player. And that sounds fun and all, but at that point, we're just playing friend swap. And if I'm going to tell the world that I have nobody to play games with, I might as well sound cool and contrarian about it. I've been talking about the main mechanics a lot more than Spring Breeze itself, and that's because I pretty much said everything about it. It's a take 2 on Kirby's Dream Land. There are some key differences. They took out the second stage, Lololo's Castle, and sort of combined it with the end of Float's Island. The boss with Kabula got scrapped, and so did the boss rush at the end. Oh no! Anyways, they also made some changes to the level design to revolve around the copy abilities. The fight with King DDD at the end is the highlight. I love the boxing ring setting. You get everyone on the bleachers cheering. Even the Super Marcus showed up. Look at that. I've played this game countless times at this point, but the way he cries after the final blow will never not be funny. But yeah, just calling this a Kirby's Dream Land retake is a fair summary, but given all the new mechanics, I find this pretty neat. It is comically short, you can beat this in 15 minutes without necessarily speedrunning, but given how this is meant to be the training wheels mode, I don't think that's a bad thing. I'll slap Spring Breeze in B tier, which seems the most fair to me. From here you have a good amount of game modes to choose from, but I think we'll head to Dyna Blade next. This one is about us chasing after this big bird because it's causing too much collateral damage. This campaign simply evolves upon Spring Breeze. The levels are a bit more difficult, and they're more built around experimenting with different copy abilities. Since the previous adventure lasted about as long as a SpongeBob episode, you really didn't get enough time to understand all the base mechanics, so Dyna Blade acts as some extra room to stretch your legs, so you can figure out for yourself your own playstyle and what copy abilities you like the most, through 4 additional levels where the training wheels slowly come off. These levels aren't anything super riveting, but I have a pretty fun time. I like the verticality of Peanut Plains. It encourages you to try out the Parasol ability that gives you more control in the air. Parasol is low-key slept on. The attack power isn't that high, but it's really good at defense and trapping enemies in a combo. Next time you find yourself in a shootout, you should bring an umbrella. It'll work, trust me. It also demonstrates some of the one-time use screen wipe abilities like Crash. Hey, look at that, you can cause nuclear fallout in a cute and wholesome way. And then there's the cooler version, Cook, because all the enemies on screen get turned into delicious stew.
Yeah,
Yummers. Mallow Castle has a fun section with the wheel ability, and I love how you can just blow the whole place up at the end. There were people that live there, but hey. What matters is that I'm having fun. There's also a level select where you can find secret exits to these copy ability test rooms, and you can run into this E icon and fight Iron Ma'am. I haven't watched an MCU movie in years. What the fuck did I miss? Of course, we end things by taking on the titular bird on the top of Candy Mountain, but we take her out like it's hunting season, only to reveal that she was actually a mother this whole time, and she was just flying around Dreamland to find like worms and shit. And since Kirby is such a chill dude, he takes care of the baby birds until Dyna Blade recovers from getting the shit beaten out of her. A very wholesome story about love, violence, and birds. Dyna Blade can be summed up to just being more Kirby, but it serves its purpose quite well. It introduces more abilities to play around with, and offers more original ideas. So I'm gonna also put this game mode in B tier, right above Spring Breeze. Also, the main theme for Dyna Blade is really catchy. It's a great demonstration of the distinct characteristics of Kirby Super Star's sound font. This series has been consistently dropping banger soundtracks over the ages, but Superstars really has a bounce to it with its high energy and its custom sound font. It's hard to explain what I love about the sound font, it's just really charming and nice to listen to. I have a lot of nostalgia for a specifically Ultra's version of the OST, but the original sound quality has its perks. It's less echoey and more compressed. So yeah, I'm probably gonna gush about the music like 50 times as we progress through this game. In fact, I'm gonna do that immediately with the next game mode, Gourmet Race. Yes, this is home to one of Kirby's most iconic soundtracks of the same name. And I gotta agree, this is still one of gaming's greatest tunes to date. It's catchy, it totally matches the hijinks of this game, and as we've heard from the Fountain of Dreams, you can reshape it into this dramatic symphony and it works just as well, maybe even better. They went really hard for what is based on two fat asses racing for food on the ground. That's basically what Gourmet Race, the game, can be boiled down to. You're running through levels against King DDD to try and gobble up the most food. There's some quick thinking involved by aiming for the path that has the most food while trying not to fall behind. It's really fun, but damn, it's so short-lived. You have 3 levels to race through, your points get tallied at the end, and that's it. I think it would have been perfect if there were 3 different sets of 3 levels instead of just the one, because what we have here just isn't enough to have lasting replayability. For what it's worth, the 2 players seems more fun since you're racing against another person instead of a computer, but like I said, that's friend slop. Really fun idea, lacking in substance, so I'm giving it a C. But the following game modes are far from disappointing, and they're easily the highlights of this game. This is when they really start to change things up. Next up is the Great Cave Offensive. Try not to get offended while we're in this game, snowflakes. Well, I'm sure as hell offended from how mean this game is to Kirby. He was just going on an afternoon stroll but then fell down 500 feet into the earth. But it turns out the underground is abundant with treasure, so we might as well make the best out of a bad situation. I really like this premise with you going deeper and deeper underground, and the locations you end up in, like a crystal mineshaft, an ancient tower, and eventually this elegant garden that's buried so deep in the earth, makes it such a surreal environment. Games like Donkey Kong Bonanza and Undertale also use the underground setting to fantastic advantage. It doesn't have to logically make sense, it's just cool to imagine that there's these bizarre environments buried beneath the world, and we just haven't discovered them yet. And the Great Cave Offensive also does a great job working with this fantasy, but there is a primary objective beyond just getting to the bottom of the cave. It's all about exploration and finding as many hidden treasures as you can. There's 60 of them in total, and it isn't easy to get all of them. In fact, some are a huge pain in the ass, but I like collecting them not only because they offer a fair challenge or puzzle, but the artifacts are fun little references, like Mr. Saturn from Earthbound, a Koopa Shell, Screw Attack from YouTube channel Screw Attack, and even the fucking Triforce as the final treasure in the game. Oh my god. With this power, we can flood King DDD's house. This game has a great sense of adventure and discovery to it, from the mythical underground, the sharp sense of exploration, and a bit of silliness, with the devs having a lot of fun coming up with the treasures. I will say, collecting all the treasures can be a bit of a headache. There's not much indication if you've gotten everything in a certain area, so unless you've memorized them, it's hard to say if you're missing a chest in the subtree area or the garden area. But I guess the vagueness sort of comes with a game from this era, so I get it. It would help if there was this menu that kept track of your progress in each area, but at that point you would need like a whole second screen for that stuff. Oh shit, they did that. Kirby Super Star Ultra makes the Great Cave way less offensive by indicating how much treasure has been found in each area, and I feel a lot more confident ending this campaign with everything checked off. This makes the road to completion still an uphill task, but a much more manageable and satisfying one. So with the improvements from the DS remake, I think I have to give this game mode the prestige title of S tier. It really excels at everything it's going for, not to mention it's definitely the game mode with the most meat on the bone. Definitely worthy of being the source material for the objectively best Smash Bros. Stage. Oh yeah, it also has you fight this computer program with turn-based combat, and at the end you get experience points for a bunch of made-up stats, like 4 happy smile points. But if you're in the mood for some real tough, hardcore badass shit, say hello to our next adventure, Revenge of Meta Knight. Our friend Meta Knight is planning to take over Dreamland with his big fucking ship. Because he's bored. That's honestly a better explanation than what he comes up with. So it's up to Kirby to infiltrate the battleship and tear it apart limb from limb. The twist is that every stage is under a timer, so you need to rush through it before Meta Knight unleashes his super laser piss. The story in this is really fun. There's a lot of goofy dialogue exchanges between the crewmates. I like this Eagle guy, and it's a shame he never makes an appearance after these games. We should bring him back. I also find it really hilarious how much of an unstoppable force Kirby is here. They throw him off the deck, blast him out of the sky, he comes comes back with Dyna Blade, they shoot her down but Kirby still lands back on deck. They throw everything they have at this thing and nothing works. And then he starts chewing through the mechanisms like he's a little creature crawling through the walls. It's hilarious to wipe the smugness off their faces and they start to feel genuine fear for their lives. Meta Knight is not going to stand for this, so he eventually fights us himself. This is a great boss fight. I like how he shows his honor by giving you a sword so that we're on equal footing. It makes for a pretty intense sword-on-sword duel. He's a tough one too. He's very agile and has a bunch of different hard-hitting moves at his disposal. And even once we deal a final blow on him, there's still the problem that we're inside the crash-landing battleship, so we gotta make our escape with our bestie Wheelie. All the while Meta Knight is using the last of his energy to slow us down. And you got that siren going off too. This whole sequence is so awesome. It makes me want to unleash my violent gamer urges and do this in real life. We watch as the battleship sinks into the ocean, seeing that our work here is done, and ride off into the sunset. Kirby's whole brand is being this cute little guy, but they also manage to balance that perfectly with hype moments and aura. That's what makes him such a fun protagonist with how malleable his character is. Revenge of Meta Knight is a fun ride from start to finish. There's a larger variety in boss fights in terms of how you defeat them, and I appreciate how the whole game doesn't take place on the halberd. In the beginning, you'll be sent off course and need to get back into the sky. The sea stage is especially pleasant because of how nice the music is. I think it might actually be my favorite track outside of boss music. We also get a nice callback to your previous adventure with Dyna Blade. I also think it's cool how there's a bigger emphasis on the cinematics, and like I said, the writing is top notch here. So not only am I going to give this an S, I think it's going above Great Cave Offensive. This has to be my favorite game mode in this entire collection. Once you've beaten every game mode up to this point, you unlock the final chapter of Kirby Super Star, Milky Way Wishes, and this is a real special one. The sun and moon are mad beefing, which is a big problem for obvious reasons. Thankfully, this random guy named Marks has an idea to settle their beef. I don't know why his name is Marks, I think Sakurai was trying to tell us something, but he says we can summon this wish-granting machine named Nova if we gather these stars from wishing fountains across the galaxy. It sounds like he just made all that up on the spot, but what's not to trust about this guy? He watches me while I sleep. Next to my two Charmanders, for one slightly taller. So we're going on this big journey from planet to planet so the people of Dreamland can maintain a good sleep schedule. There is one catch, however. We can no longer copy people's abilities. Oh shit! Why? He just forgot, I guess. The copy abilities work a bit differently in Milky Way Wishes. You instead have to find these statues called Copy Essence Deluxe, and it permanently stores that ability in your inventory and you can pull it out on the fly. And finding a bunch of these builds up an arsenal of copy abilities that you can change at any time. This gimmick made me a bit skeptical at first, but the more abilities you collect, the cooler it becomes. The way this changes your approach in playing the game makes it such an intriguing final frontier. It takes the way you interact with the copy ability mechanic and completely flips it on your head. You start off with a real sense of being nerfed, but you'll end things with an all-you-can-eat buffet. Whatever I'm in the mood for, I can take. One moment I'll be in a yo-yo mood, wanting to pull off sick tricks with my cool purple hat, and next minute I might want to change the ninja so I can be all sneaky and get the jump on poor victims. Or maybe I want to use jet? Fuck no, this one sucks. You get my point though. In addition, I find the space atmosphere of this mode really nice. It's the same deal with the Underground's visual style from Great Cave Offensive. It opens itself up to some surreal environments. My favorite is Planet Half Moon. I love how chaotic everything is with the harsh winds and hostility at every corner. It adds to the feeling of it being the final level and being the furthest into space. One of my favorite bits is that there's a secret level if you go into one of these stars in the level select. It's a bit of a trippy short level with there being this section that's all blacked out, and it plays that relaxing file select theme. And what awaits you is the essence for the copy ability, but it's a lot better in this situation because it allows you to take an enemy's ability when swallowing them doesn't work here. Honestly, it makes me wonder if they only made this ability for Milky Way Wishes. From all this praise, it seems like this is going to be another surefire S tier, but honestly I feel like an A is more appropriate because I do have some grievances. Mainly, the actual levels aren't my favorite. I like Floria with how you can change the season to solve environmental puzzles, but goddamn they went overboard with the mazes. There's this part at the end of Aqualist that has a bunch of water currents, and taking the wrong one pushes you into a door that takes you back to the beginning. I've played this game so many times for years at this point, and I always forget which is the right path. Hot Beat has an obnoxious amount of lava. I don't like the feeling that one fart causes me to burst into flames. Again, I love the celestial feeling they're going for, but unfortunately, getting wacky with the level design to match that didn't work in the gameplay's favor. Milky Way Wishes does get carried by its vibes, if I'm being real. Thankfully, I can say it ends on its best note once we're able to summon Galactic Nova. Just as we're about to ask it to break up the sun and moon, Mark shoves in at the last minute and takes the wish for himself. It turns out he was only using us this whole time, and he now has the power to spread communism across the galaxy. Nintendo can't let that happen as they're a corporation, so Sakurai programmed in this star shooter that Kirby can use to get inside Nova to foil his plans. It's a decently fun horizontal shooting section. I appreciate how there's barely a sense of bullet cooldown, so it's satisfying to mash the button really fast to increase your damage per second. It really helps with taking down the pillars in the Galactic Nova fight. I also like that detail of seeing the moving pillars in the background. Once we've given Nova cardiac arrest, all that's left is to take care of Marks. Marks' boss fight is an exceptional finale to not only Milky Way Wishes, but to Kirby Super Star as a whole. He's got a bunch of tricky attacks up his sleeve. He'll plant vines in the ground and you need to remember where they've been planted before they sprout up. He throws up an ice beam that'll catch you on the sides. He'll split apart and form a black hole. The expressions he makes throughout this fight is golden. That combined with his demented laughter really sells how much he's lost his marbles. I don't think he had any marbles to begin with, to be honest. His boss theme is stellar too. It sounds like he's taunting you while adding to his psychotic demeanor. It's not that difficult of a final boss, especially since you can just spawn another ability if you lose one, but it definitely excels in presentation. Once we defeat Marks, we get that iconic ending ensemble. You all know the one. Marks gets sent flying into the machine, that triumphant music kicks in right upon impact, Kirby waves at me, the player, thanking me for beating the game, the sun and moon are making out, we just saved the galaxy. And capitalism.
I understand why you would want to fuck dudes instead of women. Theoretically, the hole is tighter.
And so, if you're playing the original Superstar on the Super Nintendo, this is it. The final credits sequence where it actually lets you know who worked on the game. Whereas, when you beat Spring Breeze, if you wanted to know who the sound designer was, sucks to be you. However, there is a post-game mode after this, the Arena. This would continue the trend in Kirby games where after you beat the main story, it offers a boss rush, where you need to destroy all ops back-to-back with limited recovery items. I like the strategy involved where you need to think if now is a good time to use one of the healing items, or to save it for later when you might need it more. There's 19 bosses in total, though I don't know if that's entirely true. One of your opponents is a single Waddle Dee, and I just feel bad whenever I get to him. I don't want this boy's blood on my hands. You know, I don't think he really wants to be here either, so maybe we could settle this without resorting to violence. Oh, okay, there he goes. He's going for the kill. Look, that wasn't me, okay? I don't have much else to say for the Arena. What you see is what you get. It does offer a good challenge, but I just don't find myself as interested since its very premise doesn't take you through the most original content. It gets the job done as an endurance test, so I'll at least give it the top of C, meaning it's going for something, but not something that's particularly hooked me. Overall, Kirby Superstar is a real mint package of bite-sized Kirby games that excels in all these different gameplay styles. I think it still holds up pretty well after all these years, and it gets my high recommendation for newcomers. But don't hear it from me, hear it from the man himself. Because I don't know about you guys, but I think Sakurai might have a favorite child, and he's always reminding people that, hey, I made this game. At the same time though, I can't really blame him either. If I made Kirby Superstar, I'd also be very proud of it. I'd have the logo tattooed on my chest. So if you really enjoyed his other work like Smash, Kid Icarus Uprising, and Kirby Air Riders, I think you enjoy one of his most fond projects. Although, we're not actually done when talking about everything Kirby Superstar, because while this would be where the original Super Nintendo game ended, with the DS remake, Kirby Superstar Ultra, this is only halftime. The game actually keeps going where the original ended, and there's even more game modes after Milky Way Wishes. I love it when remakes go beyond just refining the original game, and in this case, extending the game a significant amount. This means we'll be fully departing the SNES version from here on out, so I think now would be a good time to look more into the differences between these two versions. Superstar Ultra, as all good remakes do, adds some quality of life that makes Superstar not as playable nowadays, mostly because that busy user interface lends itself to the dual screen setup. You can put all the information like health bars, the treasure map for Great Cave Offensive, the inventory for copy abilities for Milky Way Wishes, and so on all on the bottom screen, and it allows all the action in the top screen to not be as obstructed. This is to address one of the biggest flaws in the original game, how the UI display took up a bit too much space and left less room for the camera, making the game overall feel a bit claustrophobic. But funnily enough, this interface also demonstrates what I find to be a unique quality of the original, and that's the art direction. Ultra went for an overall more polished look. The sprite work looks cleaner, the interface is simplified to be more readable, and the cutscenes are all pre-rendered 3D animation limitations. I think these are all good improvements that make for an overall better package, but there's something quite appealing about the rough, more artsy look to the original. I think there's some unique appeal with the limitations of the graphics, and also with how the cutscenes use the in-game pixel art style. The menus have a lot more personality put into them too, with how there's different character illustrations for each of Kirby's copy abilities, and for each of the helpers too. The HUD design even changes in each game mode to fit their respective theme. Everything just feels more hand-drawn and bubbly, and it matches Kirby's whimsical tone very well. What it really comes down to is that Superstar focuses on a more vibrant presentation that leads to more distracted gameplay, while Ultra focuses on a more refined gameplay experience by toning down the artsiness. And while I think both art and gameplay are very important in the game, when it comes down to a choice, gameplay is more important in my eyes. Like I said, the original Kirby Superstar still holds up as a great game, it just becomes harder to go back when you have something that's better in almost every way. It's in the same boat as the N64 Zelda games. I think the originals have unique appeal with all its Nintendo 64-ness, but I overall prefer the more polished experience of the 3DS remakes. And in Great Addition, Ultra also has a bunch of new stuff in the post-game, but let's see how well these new game modes compare to the old. First up, we have Revenge of the King. DDD is back and more pissed than ever. We have this opening cutscene where he just stands there with an evil grin in his throne room with the lights off. It must be really awkward being one of the Waddle Dees. One of them is like, "Your Majesty, can we turn the lights back on now?" "Shut up! I'm trying to ore farm!" On our usual rendezvous to DDD's castle, things are looking a bit more purple than usual. Revenge of the King is essentially a hard mode or new game plus of Spring Breeze. The levels are more treacherous, enemies have a lot more health, the entire world is out for revenge basically, and I gotta say, I think the ramped up difficulty is so refreshing. It really feels like it's meeting my skill level, whereas the base game feels like a walk in the park. I also like how they changed the level theming to be more twisted and evil. The pretty, colorful flowers are replaced with Venus flytraps, and the cloud area now has thunderstorms going on in the back. It doesn't add much to the gameplay, but it is a nice detail. This whole game has a strange coat of paint to it, especially with the enemy reskins. The Bronto birds turn into crows, the Cappies are depressed, an apple a day makes me scared and have nightmares, and the Poppy Bros have unmatched freakiness. Look at that. Once you think it's time to fight DDD like before, he has some more tricks up his sleeve this time. First you gotta fight this blimp named Kabula, who is actually a boss from the original Kirby's Dream Land, and makes a grand return with an invigorating shooting segment with some kick-ass boss music. And the castle is now a full level where you find an entourage of mini-bosses from Kirby, Knightmare, and Dreamland. And like Revenge of Meta Knight, you have dialogue where they go from cockiness to panic as you defeat everything they throw at you. It does kind of feel too much like an imitation of that sequence, but it's still a fun sequence regardless. But the real main event is the fight with masked DDD, easily one of the coolest parts of this remake. The tone here is perfect, from the dark, empty stadium to the bright electric cage surrounding the ring, but it's definitely that boss theme that sells it all. An absolutely godly remix of DDD's theme that would be remixed time and time again throughout the series. It all lets you know that this guy finally locked the fuck in. Okay, maybe not. Yeah, what really blows about this fight is that he goes down way too quickly. It's because it's set up like the Meta Knight battle, except this time he gives you a hammer, the most busted weapon in the game, and they did not account for that with his HP. This fight lasted under 30 seconds. It's a real shame because everything else here is spot on. Despite tripping over the finish line near the end, this is still a very solid game mode. As far as I'm aware, I think this was the last time DDD was a willing antagonist against Kirby, and here on out there would be the sort of rival/ally relationship. I think I'll rate this at an A because it is quite derivative of the base game's ideas. And in reality, that's kind of the case with the rest of these new modes. They're all based on content from the original Superstar. And that's made a lot more obvious with our next game, Helper to Hero. I don't like this one. It's the only game in this collection where I'm just thinking, why? Helper to Hero gives the spotlight to the many helper characters that Kirby can summon. This seems like a cool underdog story. What is our quest to make Knuckle Joe a true hero alongside Kirby? A boss rush. Again. We're just doing the arena again, but not as fun. I guess the catch with this one is that when you're playing as a helper character, you're committed to using their copy ability, and I guess it's trying to get you to practice their particular movesets. But like, is that not what I've been doing throughout this entire game? I've already figured out that I like using hammer, and I'm not really interested in experimenting at this point. I gave Knuckle Joe a chance, and he's just a complete chud in comparison. This isn't nearly as transformative as it makes out to be, because with the arena, I feel like almost every player is going to stick with the same copy ability anyways. It's just that this time around, I'm weaker, and I don't want to be weak. I want to be big and strong like Kirby. But wait, there is a secret boss at the end, the iconic Wham Bam Jewel.
Who the fuck
It's like Wham Bam Rock, but they're upper class now. And I guess they have Parkinson's. I don't give a shit. This is the only game mode that feels like filler. They could have done something more interesting with a mode based on the helpers. I think it would have been cool if they gave each helper a different set of levels that revolve around their copy abilities movesets. Think of something like the challenge levels from Return to Dreamland. And at this point in the game, I'm getting really tired of fighting the same bosses for a third or fourth time. I swear to God, if I have to see Fatty Whale one more time, I'm afraid this is going to be the one mode I'm giving a subpar rating of D tier. At least this is the only dud in this entire collection, but still. This next game mode also stars a different character, but someone you actually give a shit about, Knightmare Ultra. I'm starting to notice that almost every inciting incident in these stories is that someone was bored, because the story of this game involves Meta Knight starting shit just because. Knightmare Ultra is a speedrun mode where you run through almost all the levels from the base game. Meta Knight is stronger and more agile than Kirby, and there's also this experience point system where you can spend points from killing enemies to do stuff like heal, increase your speed for a short time, and even an AoE attack. This additional mechanic does help prevent replaying through these levels feel less mundane, but unfortunately it still feels kinda mundane. The result is that I got into this autopilot state of rushing through these rooms and periodically pressing the speed power up. But I will say, it sure beats just fighting every boss again. God damn it! I swear to Christ, I'm gonna be known as the guy who made whales extinct. The fact that this includes fighting all the bosses again is just... it gets really dull. If they skipped over the bosses and just had us run through the levels, it would do so much for the breakneck pacing that this mode is supposed to have. Taking on Krakow as Meta Knight is not as hard as they thought it was. Knightmare Ultra is fun at first with its unique take on the gameplay, but I think it way overstays its welcome. But as per usual, we can always rely on these ending on a high note. Once we catch up to the end of Milky Way Wishes, Meta Knight finally explains himself on why he's throwing hands with everyone, including ripping apart his own fucking battleship. It would have been funny if we fought Meta Knight as Meta Knight. Some Luigi shenanigans, you know? He was just training before he would summon Galactic Nova to wish to fight the strongest warrior in the galaxy. It's this pink dude named Galactonite who got banned for typing slurs in chat.
I said GG 5 times, and now I'm banned from playing this stupid game.
So Meta Knight's gonna humble this guy to prove that he's the strongest warrior. And oh my god, this might be the best boss in the whole game. He behaves a lot like Meta Knight with how he's constantly moving, but with an even more extreme arsenal. From summoning a bunch of fire pillars to spinning a beam around the arena, combine his relentless attack cycles with that hard-ass metal track blasting in the background, you have a fight that really gets the adrenaline running. As hard as I've been on Knightmare, it makes up for it with Galactonite. This shit's awesome. I think this takes what would be an average game mode to a high B tier slot. I think it's also important to note that Knightmare isn't actually canon and is meant to be more of a what-if scenario. At least that's what they said. Now I don't know what's real and what's not. Nowadays I feel like HAL Laboratories are gaslighting me. And with that, Meta Knight has killed everyone. Good for him. And the credits roll once more, marking the end to Kirby Super Star Ultra. Or is it? Okay, we've got one final thing to do, and this was when they set the tradition of having one last gauntlet to really test your Kirby gaming skills. The True Arena. Third boss rush. Oh dear. For what it's worth, this is the best one by a tall margin, and that's because it consists of all the extra hard bosses from the post-game, and beating them all one after another is actually a lot to ask for. Imagine having to fight the former strongest dude in the universe alongside 9 others. That's not even mentioning Krakow Jr.'s revenge. You do not fuck with Krakow Jr.'s revenge. The secret final opponent involves asking another what if, being what if Mark survived the collision. Well, obviously, his corpse would fuse with some of the machine parts and create Mark's soul. I mean, it's not rocket science. Man, what a freaky bastard this is. His design is a lot more unsettling. I don't know where the fuck we are. His attacks are souped up alongside some new shit to run away from. It's real anxiety inducing as the final, trust me bro, it's actually final boss. Come on, one more hit, and yeah, we did it! Dude. There's no need to yell. It's not like this crazy difficult gamer rage fodder unless you're under the age of 10, but it's at that level that gets me excited in every playthrough. It really has that feeling of, this is it. To conclude this tier list, I'll give the True Arena a noble A rank. And as a reward for proving yourself, you unlock this compilation of bloopers for the cutscenes. They really didn't need to do all of this, but I love that they did. It's genuinely a really nice reward for beating the True Arena. It serves to ease the tension and gives you some good laughs before this game gets wrapped up for real. This really is the game that keeps on giving. Right when you think you've had your fill, they serve up another course. That's what makes this episodic structure of Superstar so effective. You always have something new to look forward to. I think the new game modes for Ultra are generally weaker than those from base Superstar, but I don't think think they're weak enough to undermine the idea of expanding the original game. They only add to an experience that was already fun, so Kirby Super Star Ultra remains as the superior version of the game. Even then, you can't go wrong with the OG either. Oh fuck, wait, the minigames. I almost completely forgot to talk about them, but now that I think about it, there is really not that much to say. They're just fun distractions between game modes, and that's about it. My favorite one is Snack Tracks, in case you're wondering. If I were to rate both versions of Superstar, I would give the original roughly a 9 out of 10, and with the DS remake, I wholeheartedly believe it's worth a 10. It's not perfect by any means, but it's about as perfect as I would want a game to be. I also see this as the most significant entry in the series. It was the birthplace of so many series icons, copyability hats, Gourmet Race, the Battleship Halberd. Galactic Nova would be this whole can of worms, but if you're a casual Kirby enjoyer, don't worry about it. That's for me to worry. Even with Ultra, how many times have you seen Mass DDD, Galactonite, and the True Arena in modern Kirby? It has quite the legacy, and I think it's well deserving of it. I am running out of ways to say that this game is awesome, so I'll wrap things up here. I'd recommend playing both versions, but if it comes down to a choice between the two, I would go for Superstar Ultra. Also, get Kirby Air Riders, that game's really fucking fun.
I pushed the wrong one.
Oh my god!